When can we expect the next video from you? I really hope it is about the CRT Emudriver. I just want to enjoy emulation on a CRT from a laptop! Please do a tutorial video on how to get 240p out of a PC. Oh my! Still anxiously waiting for Emudriver. Could you test the output of 240p via a PC with her Emudriver? MisterCast and Groovy Mister are worth looking into. What about ATI CRT EMU 240p output? Just install CRT Emudriver on a cheap PC. Don't fool with all this blurry, laggy choreo stuff. Just install CRT Emudriver. CRT Emudriver. CRT Emudriver. CRT Emudriver.
Since the very first episode of the Downscaling Chronicles, I've been told to grab a cheap PC and
just install CRT Emudriver.
I understand that rendering modern retro games in their native resolution, or just about any content via custom mode lines, removes external hindrances of a dedicated downscaler, such as lag and scaling artifacts. So if CRT Emudriver is one of the cheapest and accessible methods of displaying content in 15 kHz, it's gotta be the absolute best, right? And these downscalers really are just blurry, laggy choreo stuff. But is it as easy as just installing CRT Emudriver? Let's find out. I could not have gotten as far as I did without some help from others much better versed than me with PCs. Thanks to my friend Peter, Deckit, Wriggles, and most of all, Batocera super user Rion. Seriously, thank you so much, Rion. He quickly learns that I'm not really a PC kinda guy. Emulating Gen 1 Pokemon on DOS back in 2000 was my peak hackerman potential. And for some further context, during the making of this video was actually the first time I inserted a GPU into a motherboard. So I'm way out of my comfort zone and consider this a diary of a PC virgin. I could blame all my technical issues on my naivety, but as you'll see, there were some variables just out of my control, and this was not at all smooth sailing. CRT Emudriver, developed by Calamity, enables certain legacy AMD GPUs to output custom resolutions, and in this case, resolutions below the Windows default. Calamity's thread on gdora.com listed compatible GPUs, which helped me look for this Radeon R7 250 card with 1GB of RAM. Cards with VGA or DVI have a high chance of being compatible, but some newer cards with only digital output may work with an external DAC. These drivers apparently don't work on Windows 11, but the upcoming VideoAmp by French developers Bandicoot and NJZ3, a hardware device with an onboard VGA EDIT emulator that sits between the PC's graphics card and the CRT, opens the door to output 15 kHz on newer operating systems. My graphics card has a DVI port, so to output to my CRT, I'm using a DVI to VGA pass-through adapter, then a VGA to BNC cable to output RGB. I was given this PC courtesy of my friend Robbo with an Intel i7-4770 CPU and 4GB of RAM. But the pre-installed Windows 10 was riddled with errors, and I needed a completely fresh install of Windows. Otherwise, if using an existing PC with a stable OS, it may help to first run Display Driver Uninstall or DDU to avoid any driver conflicts. From here, the setup is pretty straightforward thanks to Calamity's guide. With the PC output to an HD display, I went to Ghidorah.com and downloaded the CRT Emudriver versions that corresponded to my GPU. Running the setup program prompted to put Windows in a test mode, which the setup initiated on restart. Once in test mode, running the setup again detected the GPU as a basic display adapter, and in under 2 minutes, it installed CRT Emudriver. After a reboot, the graphics card under Display Adapters in Device Manager showed CRT Emudriver to confirm the install was a success. Next, the mode lines need to be installed through VMmaker. In Edit Settings, I changed the base monitor preset to Arcade 15.7 kHz. Before proceeding with the video card settings, I had to connect the DVI output to my CRT, which made my display a selectable option, and chose the analog VGA output. After pressing Enable EDID Emulator, I had a 480i signal on my CRT via RGB-HV, and for RGBS, just click on the box below to enable Composite Sync. You can proceed to generate mode lines from here, but I wanted to add more, including super resolutions. In the super resolutions text file are a bunch of 2560 wide mode lines, which is wide enough to cover practically all horizontal resolutions in RetroArch. So I merged the super resolutions with the generic ones in a text file and added a few of my own, like 720x240 and 432x240 for widescreen 240p games like Sonic Mania. I pointed to the text file in the User Mode tab and then hit OK to generate and install the mode lines. And in this fundamental state, CRT Emudriver is up and running in 640x480i. If using multiple displays and the CRT is the secondary monitor, then Windows display settings won't show the resolutions created in VMmaker. So either make the CRT the primary monitor or disconnect the HD display. It's ideal to leave the desktop resolution at 640x480i, as any lower than this renders the desktop and all its applications to that literal size, which is just not functional. And this is where my troubles began. If I choose any progressive resolution below 720x240, say 320x240, Windows Desktop rendered as expected, but the output to the CRT remained interlaced at 480i. I changed the vertical rate in the advanced settings, but the progressive option bumped the signal to 31 kHz. I tried using HV Sync as well as different CRT displays to rule out any external factors, but to no success. I checked with Calamity himself, and he confirmed that this isn't normal behavior and likely an issue with Windows. On his recommendation, I downloaded the Radeon configuration tool supplied on the main CRT Emudriver tutorial page. This way, I can see if the GPU is scaling the video, which no, it wasn't. In fact, when I changed the aspect ratio setting, it uninstalled CRT Emudriver, and I had to run the DDU utility and start from scratch. And that wasn't the last time this would happen. To force proper low resolution 240p output, I had to select the resolution from Arcade OSD and apply it to the desktop. This utility is also used to fine-tune custom resolutions, but I've been told to adjust geometry with the monitor's service menu before altering anything in Arcade OSD in case sync falls out of range. So using Arcade OSD, I forced 427x240p to play Sonic Mania, which covers the game's native resolution of 424x240 with a few horizontal pixels to spare in the underscan. And it's just as crisp as you'd imagine. Now this should be running in 16:9, but Arcade OSD forced the aspect ratio to 4:3 when I chose the resolution. The 4:3 stretching transforms circles into ovals and squares into rectangles, and while the aspect ratio police might mind, it didn't offend me in the slightest. Otherwise, the PVM20L5 can squeeze the aspect ratio back down to 16:9 for pixel perfection. Sonic Mania can play in 4:3 by altering the settings file, but remember that Windows is mishandling my desktop 240p resolutions, which caused heavy overscan. Next on the pixel art menu was Cuphead. The game's art style mimics classic cartoons typically displayed in 480i. Sure enough, outputting the game at 640 by 480i gave it a much more natural look, bringing out the details and fluidity of the backgrounds, and also enhanced the film grain effect. Recently, I learned that there's a 2D port of the original BioShock released over a decade ago on mobile platforms, thanks to a video by B4 Brandos. And the pixel art was begging for scanlines. The emulator was rendering the game's native resolution, but the desktop was outputting 320 by 240p, which caused extreme vertical overscan, making the game unplayable in 240p. Setting Windows to display 640 by 480i rendered the full screen, but without those sweet scanlines, felt like getting socks on Christmas. If you like sipping on soy lattes, then you're gonna love internet browsing in 480i. I mean, it is actually tolerable and text is easily read. And even if some videos weren't meant for interlaced displays, it overall looked very authentic, and would make for a great media player for streaming classic movies and anime. Over a year ago, my color calibrating tools and knowledge were less than ideal to white balance my PVM20L5. I used a Spider 2 probe, which has an organic sensor, and was outputting the video from a PC through a chain of devices. Thanks to Lex Locatelli's tutorial on using HCFR, I'm much better equipped this time around to recalibrate the PVM. This time with a Color Monkey X-Rite sensor and outputting HCFR test patterns directly to the 20L5 in RGB without any external equipment. And unlike last time, I was getting Delta E's below 2.0 in under 10 minutes. By inputting HDMI video via a capture device and outputting 240p via CRT Emudriver, I had the bright idea of turning the PC into an external downscaler. Now, let's state the obvious, this is gonna have a shit ton of lag.
A few moments later.
I input 720p from a time sleuth into a cheap capture device and OBS. If your name is Retro Bobberino, look away now. With all the variables at play, capture device latency, PC processing, and software-induced delay, the result was up to 156 milliseconds of lag.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
I either adapted to the nearly 10 frames of lag, or Super Mario Wonder is extremely lenient, but I still managed to get through a few levels. There was, however, frequent frame stuttering, but the scaling was surprisingly unspoilt. Even still, using a PC and capture device as an external scaler is just going full circle and not worth the outrageous lag. Of the many uses for CRT Emudriver, where it really shines is running GroovyMAME and RetroArch, which allow for automatic resolution switching, where you don't have to mess with Windows display settings or Arcade OSD, or even what resolution to choose. These programs do it all based on the game that's launched. Calamity forked the original MAME emulator and in essence is plug and play, provided you BYO the ROM sets. Calamity has a guide on gdora.com, but even with the bare minimum setup, it worked flawlessly by automatically switching resolutions each time I chose a different game. Mortal Kombat Arcade, for example, plays in 57Hz. And even if my camera can't properly capture it, you'll have to take my word that the character icons scroll without stutter. RetroArch took a few more steps but had equally impressive results. In the video display settings, there's an option for switch res CRT resolutions, but first turn on the high resolution menu setting, otherwise good luck navigating RetroArch. There's a generic 15 kHz output, but 240p comes in many different sizes. And notice that the title screen for Sonic 2 on the Sega Mega Drive is completely off.
Help me.
What you really want is auto resolution switching by choosing the INI setting. This way, RetroArch looks for the SwitchRes INI file to output the game's native resolution automatically. After downloading SwitchRes and copying the INI file into the root of the RetroArch folder, I chose the super resolution of 2560, the same pixel width as the mode lines I copied over from VMmaker, and just like with GroovyMAME, SwitchRes drew each scan line with absolute pixel precision. And when the game changed to 2-player mode, it also switched the resolution seamlessly to 480i, just like an original Sega Mega Drive. For a comprehensive guide, I highly recommend you check out Regals' post on Reddit with links to several PDFs that have detailed instructions on how to optimize everything. Back in the day, DOS games drawn in 320x200 were line doubled to output on a 31 kHz monitor. RetroArch running the DOSBox core seems to display DOS games in their original resolution of 320x200 with black bars on the top and bottom of the screen. Thick scan lines weren't the intended look, but man do these games look amazing in 240p. There was, however, just one game, Mice Men, that wouldn't automatically display in 240p, and instead played in the desktop resolution of 480i, and I'm sure it could have been fixed in the switchres.ini file. I've never had the pleasure of owning an Atari Jaguar, and I've been eager to play Alien vs Predator. I've been following Video Game Esoterica's regular updates on the Mr. FPGA core, so I've seen enough gameplay footage to realize that the RetroArch core associated with Jag CD was struggling to output a solid frame rate. Big P Emu is said to be the gold standard for Atari Jaguar emulation, but I couldn't find the core in RetroArch. So I downloaded the standalone emulator and set the video resolution to 320x240. However, either due to my Windows resolution woes or something within the emulator, it didn't switch resolutions. But forcing 240p with Arcade OSD worked a treat. At this point, I'm loving what CRT Emudriver can do. Except, for several different reasons, the driver just kept uninstalling itself. And I already reinstalled CRT Emudriver not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 5 times, 5 times, 5 times, 5 times, 5 times, 5 times, 5 times. Once because of a Windows update, another when trying to open OBS, another after running the Radeon GPU tool, and 2 more times just because Windows said Each time I reinstalled CRT Emu, I also had to remove the GPU, otherwise I got a black screen. Then I had to output HDMI to another display, nuke the driver with DDU, and start over. This old Dell laptop with Windows 7 got me through my first few years of university. And looky here, a VGA port. Since there's no dedicated GPU, I did some research and found that there's other methods for outputting a custom resolution, using CRU, Custom Resolution Utility Tool, and QuickRes. CRU is used to make custom resolutions, and then QuickRes lets you assign the resolutions to the display. But then I found that this method won't work with Intel graphics, which is exactly what I have. So while it rendered Windows in 320 by 240, it still output in 720p. And going into the Intel graphics control panel also proved that 15 kHz resolutions made in CRU didn't make its way to the display driver. Alternatively to Windows, you could install Linux and output 240p. And if you want more bells and whistles, then there's Batocera. And from everything Rion's told me, it's got all the resolution switching built in. So what about Windows users that don't have a compatible GPU for CRT Emudriver, or soft 15 kHz for even older versions of Windows? For Mr. FPGA owners, there's Groovy Mister.
Groovy.
Groovy Mister was developed by Sarkis, and may he rest in peace. It uses a modified GroovyMAME to output video over an Ethernet connection to a Mr. FPGA, which can then output 15 kHz video through the analog I/O board. I meticulously followed guides from Loose Retro Source and Video Game Esoterica, which both had slightly different setup methods. But even with a direct Ethernet connection, this was as best as I could display GroovyMAME's menu. MisterCast by Shane Lynch builds on Groovy Mister's foundations to cast your screen over Ethernet, but it requires a reliable Groovy Mister setup. And as that's not working, Groovy Mister's screensaver would just freeze anytime I tried to cast my laptop over Ethernet. Even though I couldn't get it working, I can appreciate how useful this could be for someone's setup without a graphics card using a DE10 Nano as a GPU to output a modern laptop or a standalone PC to a CRT. CRT Emudriver is a fantastic asset to PC owners and anyone on a budget that wants to experience modern retro games on a CRT, or with a dedicated arcade setup. GroovyMAME and RetroArch are where it really shines to enjoy retro games with seamless resolution switching. With all of the possibilities of using a PC in 15 kHz, I've really only explored the tip of the iceberg. Things like widescreen hacks and fan-made games, the list goes on. And some of you may want to know, will I set it up properly and incorporate it in my setup? And the answer is no. For several years now, I've been using a Raspberry Pi 4 with Recalbox and a CRT dual hat, which also has 15 kHz native resolution switching. It also has Kodi Media Player built in, where I just attach my USB drive and play classic movies in 480i. I've already made the purchase, done the setup, and it's been very reliable. Now, let's not conflate my stance. A used PC is much cheaper, more powerful, and more versatile than a Pi. But I just can't endure any more heartache if Windows uninstalls CRT Emudriver. Anyway, it's my setup, and I'll Pi if I want to. So have my thoughts on dedicated downscalers changed at all? Absolutely not. In fact, it just made me appreciate a good downscaler that much more. You see, with an OSSC Pro, I can downscale any and all of my existing media and gaming library across all consoles. With the OSSC Pro's latest firmware, if I simply output 720 or even 1080p from my laptop, I can downscale to 240p with essentially zero lag, no setup required. I spent so many hours setting up my PC, stuck in resolutionception, and reinstalling CRT Emudriver, whereas one HDMI cable later, I was playing Cuphead in 480i from my laptop with the OSSC Pro. Plus, I've already purchased these games, so I have no incentive to re-download them, let alone invest my time and money in an entirely separate ecosystem. But that convenience did not come cheap at 330 euros. So what if I never had a fancy-pantsy scaler, or a physical gaming library, and simply wanted to output direct 240p from a PC without breaking the bank? I guess I would just install CRT Emudriver. After all, it is supreme. If I had the patience, I would have tried an older version of Windows or even Batocera. So while I acknowledge it is the best way to display games in their native resolution and is one of the cheapest options out there, it wasn't without frustration. Your mileage may definitely vary, and I'm not saying that CRT Emudriver is broken. It isn't. Windows, however, can go f*** itself. I usually enjoy making the downscaling Chronicles, but not this one. Give me blurry, laggy choreo stuff any day of the week. Now if you'll excuse me, I gotta let off some steam.
Yo, let me tell you about this digital hell. Spending hours ain't nothing going well. This damn PC is testing my mic. Resolution's wrong, screen ain't looking right. CRT Emudriver, supposed to be the key, but this damn machine's just mocking me. Drivers vanishing like ghosts in the night, leaving me stranded in digital blind. My switching OSSC Pro, a simpler time. Downscaling bliss, no technical climb. But this PC drama, it's a constant fight. Fuck this computer with all of my might. CRT blues got me singing this song. This tech nightmare is dragging me along. The pixels dancing in a twisted array. Wish I could throw this whole thing away. Hours wasted, troubleshooting in vain. Trying to fix this mess, ease the digital pain. Control panel's a maze, I can't find my way. Just want a game, but I'm stuck in disarray.